Hello, hello. There's Colin. Hello, Colin. Hello,
Hello.
hello. And the voice. All right. Hello, Brittany. Hello, Nasrin. Hello, Brandon. Awesome.
Morning.
Morning. All right. Hello, Xavier. All right. I love it. We have like a forum. Hello, Alexis. Hello, Emily. Hello, Charlene. Hello, Ariana. Okay, wait. Oh, no, Nasrin was just here, I thought. Um, good. I'm doing the chat now. Okay. Good morning, Anissa. Good morning, Chanel. Good morning, Brittany. Good morning, Alexis, the double. Good morning, Adenelsi. Morning, Charlene, the double. Good morning, Gaia. Morning, Ryan. Good morning, Mickey. Good morning, Emily. Awesome. Okay, okay. I lost a minute getting your apologies. Oh, and did I say, yeah, Colin, Brandon, Xavier, Nasreen, hello. Oh, and Nasreen came in and out. Right, got it. Okay, and Juan. Okay. Awesome, awesome. Okay, let's like just I didn't even oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. Okay, I just realized I was all ready to go. You can see that I'm all ready to go, but not that it matters. But I just realized, of course, we didn't finish well, I didn't resolve the whole train of thought thing from um yes, from Monday. So all right, let me back up for a second. So the next goal is to get to homework 4. And good morning. Sorry, good morning, Mickey and Emily and Ariana, if I didn't say. The next goal is to get to homework 4. But of course, I didn't even tell you. I just remembered that I didn't even tell you the point, really, of homework 3 of train of thought. So let's do that. We could, and let me make clear, we can we honestly could keep discussing the nuances and implications of train of thought forever. And I have. Well, so, but we won't. Um, I'll just cut straight to the chase. Here's the chase. Because the major insight, and I remember you guys had it. I don't remember which ones of you, but a number of you. Let me back up again. I'm sorry. We really could. When I say that we could debate and discuss and unpack the nuances of train of thought, I'm not forever. I'm not exaggerating, but let me make clear what I mean by that. The major insight was when a number of you brought up Earth, right? Now you all know that it's comparatively recent in history that we come to regard the Earth as moving past the sun, let alone past the center of the galaxy, let alone past whatever that's moving past, the center of the supercluster, right? This is a very recent way of thinking about things. Recent as of, let's say, 1632 AD. For all of history up until that point, the prevailing understanding and model of the universe was that the Earth sat still at the center of the universe while a bunch of stuff moved past us, right? And I know that you all know that. What I want to make clear, what? So first of all, it took hundreds, really thousands of years for people even to come to this, to become convinced that the ground below our feet is not stable right now. So in a way, what I don't want to do is bore you with the same story that you've heard, since third grade. Well, I definitely don't want to bore you with the same stories that you've heard since third grade, but I do want to make clear that even that story is a bit oversimplified and but if it took civilization that long to come to this idea, that the seemingly firm ground beneath us is not so firm, then there's no reason that we wouldn't take a couple of days to convince ourselves of that here and now, right? Let me go, in fact, a little step further. When people say that for thousands of years we regarded the earth as still, excuse me, as still and stationary below our feet, those people that thought that were not idiots, like by any stretch of the imagination, nor were they crazy, nor were they blind oppressors who had no interest in truth. Okay. To the extent that you might have ever heard this, well, I have to be very, I mean, those people included Aristotle, for example, who thought that, who absolutely believed that the earth below us was stable and sitting still at the center of the universe. Now, let me reinforce before we go any further that it's not a stupid view. Not only is it not a stupid view, but in order to do physics properly, what we need to do for a moment is actually appreciate that actually, like what we need to do is slightly discard or set aside whatever story we heard in third grade or sixth grade or seventh grade or 12th grade about the hero Galileo who finally had the rationality and the sensory observations to finally go against the insanity and ignorance and oppression of the church uh, or of Ptolemy or of his predecessors. Like the fact of the matter is, what Aristotle thought, Aristotle, for example, or Ptolemy or Pope Gregory the 13th, what they, how they treated the earth in their mind is absolutely the way we all treat the earth in our mind. I mean, we do have to be real for a moment, and this is part of the purpose of train of thought. If we think that the punchline of the Galileo story, however you've ever read it or heard it, if we think the punchline of the story is everybody else was an idiot or everybody else was an oppressor, and Galileo was the one person who was actually thinking or trusting his senses, that is a very unfair oversimplification. And in fact, it's insulting to our own intelligence and makes it difficult to make the conceptual leaps necessary to do physics. Because the fact of the matter is, as train of thought is sort of trying to reveal or remind us, on a daily basis, we have no sensory evidence or rational reason to believe that the earth is moving. Like, can I say that for the, in fact, I'm going to change the view. I mean, I'm getting like, and let me say, this is not a tangent. This is the point. In fact, not only the point of the train of thought and the point of today's class, even though I almost forgot to do this, it's really the point of physics. Like to stop and say for a second, hang on, hang on. If science, if classical, if the beginning of classical physics and contemporary forensic science is about sensory evidence and rational inference, if those are the two main tools that we rely on to do science, we rely on, right, measurement, empirical evidence, observation with numbers, and deduction, rational inference, playing with language. In other words, if what we rely on to do science is double equal signs and triple equal signs, let's get it straight. On a daily basis, not one of us has any triple equal sign or double equal sign basis for believing that the earth moves. I'm going to go a step further now that I'm getting myself all worked up. And I do think about this all the time. And it is the area of my research, or was and is, like you could go on and on about, I do go on and on about this. And I'm not the only one, obviously. Like, I should start right. I will start writing things down in a second, but let me go another step. When we say, all right, no, I'm going to do this. When we say that the earth is moving, or put another way, if you're like me, if you're in third grade and you're asked to build a model of the solar system with fruits, as I was in third, maybe they do it differently now, or maybe it's like all over the internet. But like when I was in third grade, it was very exciting to go home, and I still remember doing this, like I honestly do, to go home and get a watermelon and get an orange and get a ping pong ball or something like that and be like, here's the sun and here's the earth going around the sun. Okay, I got it. This is what the universe looks like. And accompanying that, somewhere along the line, I got this story about how like everybody was idiotic and like just blindly trusted authority and the dogma of the church or something like that. And they ridiculously thought that the earth was in the center just because it looked that way. But then thank goodness the hero Galileo came along and said, I don't just trust in authority blindly. I trust my senses, my reproducible observations, and the workings of my mind. I'm going to show you, no, in fact, the earth doesn't sit still, it moves. Okay, and so then Galileo became a hero of that story. Now let me point out that the irony of that story, and I'm not saying it's wrong, and by the way, I'm not even saying that Galileo isn't my hero. Galileo is totally my hero, but not in that way, because the way that story is told, what ends up happening is I build a model out of fruits. And so then I end up saying, yay, I'm believing in the hero. I believe that the earth is moving. But why do I believe in the hero's conclusion? I believe it because my teacher told me, right? Or because Galileo told my teacher to tell me. Like, I'm not believing anything rational. No one gave me a reason to believe that. Like, literally, like they didn't. I mean, they didn't. And and I know that, well, I won't get into that, and it's not at all what my senses tell me ever on any day. My senses do not tell me that the floor beneath me is unstable and slipping through the universe, right? So all I end up doing is worshiping a hero for not trusting authority, and I just trust his authority, right? And what ends up happening there, if you're at all like me, and I hope you're not for your sake, but I end up accidentally getting the message, really, that science is just about accepting bizarro conclusions, such as we're standing on a moving ship. And then we go from these bizarre conclusions into further and further memorization and acceptance. And the whole story topples in on itself. It ends up having me for a long time. It's not about me, but it happens to a lot of people that if we get a lot of these really surprising, weird, unexplained conclusions early on, then we think of science in exactly the way that we think we're thinking of the medieval church, but we're actually treating science that way. And the medieval church, well, whatever, I won't get into that. So that's bad. I mean, that's bad. And let me tell you, if you've ever thought about it for a minute, have you ever been like, the earth is moving? Like, really? Like, really? First of all, good for you. If you even for a minute were like, really? But second of all, if you resolved it in your mind, just like in the train of thought, or that you're like, oh, the elevator is moving, it's not the building, or I'm in the airplane, okay, it's not the cloud, it's not the land that's moving past me, it's the airplane. If you even resolved in your mind, let's unpack that for a second. A lot of us unpack that or resolve that by saying, well, I guess the whole point is that the earth, well, a lot of people will say, well, the earth is moving, but what keeps us from feeling it is gravity or something. They'll use some other science word, right? Well, let me tell you right now, that is not an answer. Like, you can't say the earth is moving, but the reason we don't feel it is gravity. I have no idea what that even means. I'm sure I've said it to myself many times when I was younger, but gravity just means I'm being pulled down toward the earth. Why would that mean? I mean, that just means I'm part of the ship. Why would that mean that I wouldn't feel the motion? It may be why I'm stuck to the earth, but it doesn't explain why I wouldn't feel the motion or sense it in any way. It doesn't explain why if I jump up, a tree doesn't hit me from the east, or why birds don't have a harder time flying west than east or whatever. Second of all, if you've ever thought to yourself, well, I guess the point is that the earth is like moving so slow that we don't feel like it's so freaking big and it's moving so slow that we don't feel it. Well, that's smart. And I'm not shaming any of you, by the way. If anything, I'm shaming my third grade science teacher. May she rest in peace. Like, and I'm not really doing that because it's not her fault, and it was a him. Uh, but I want to clear this up slightly, or at least show you that there's something that needs clearing up. If you've ever thought Oh, I guess they say the earth is moving, and I guess I did build a grapefruit like around, but like, I mean, it doesn't really feel like the earth is moving. So, and it's kind of weird to think that I'm like always like hurtling through space. So I guess the point is the earth is just moving like too slowly for me to feel it. Well, no. Because if you believe that the earth is moving, if you believe this whole solar system thing that we do now believe, in modern times? No, the idea is that it's spinning around its axis, at least like say you were near the, I mean, it's different speeds depending on where you, but if you're near the equator, you're spinning around the Earth's axis at close to 1,000 miles an hour, which is faster than any airplane that most of us have ever been on. All the time, 1,000 miles, and like if you're up here in New York, or it's a little slower, maybe it's more like 700 miles an hour, but that's pretty freaking fast. That's like an airplane, right? And much more to the point, if you believe the earth is moving, if you believe this, anything on the internet or like solar, and I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm not a crazy. I mean, I may be crazy, but I'm not in that way. I'm not saying it's wrong, but I just want you to understand what it is that we're saying or that you're believing. If you believe the earth is moving, you believe that it's going past the sun at speeds on average of 65,000 miles an hour. 65,000 miles an hour. That is definitely faster than any airplane like ever. And it's faster than rocket ships need to go in order to achieve escape velocity and like make it to the moon. It's faster than a rocket ship all the time. Okay. So if you believe that the earth, that you're standing on a floor that is continually in motion, you're believing that it is continually in motion faster than a rocket ship. So you are believing something very strange. I am not saying it's wrong. I'm saying, first of all, that anybody who didn't believe it before Galileo was not an idiot. Like they were looking at their senses and their brains, and their brains and their bodies were saying, dude, it's a floor. What do you mean 65,000 miles an hour? And don't think people didn't debate it before Galileo. It's not that Galileo was the first person who ever thought of this. He wasn't, and he knew that. But he was the first person to nail it down. And we're going to get to that, like, I swear, in like a minute. And he is my hero. Oh, wait, shit. Word up, G Money. Yes, someone in the very good. And thank you for showing that you're paying attention to. Someone in the direct chat just wrote shout out to Copernicus. Yes. Like Galileo was basing his work on the work of Copernicus directly. He wasn't like plagiarizing and he wasn't like kidding anybody, but that's absolutely right. And even Copernicus was not even the first, but right, absolutely right. And I'm just saying, I mean, I get all fired up about this because honestly, a lot of my research is in this area, not it is of just like what it all means that we do or do not believe in the Earth's motion. Like it's a very rich and what Galileo really did for us, and et cetera, et cetera. And I'm not trying to confuse you. I mean, a little bit, a little bit. I'm trying to disturb you a little bit. Just I'm trying to say the simplest punchlines in science are not the easiest. They're, I'm trying to say, in order to go forward in physics, or even to start, physics starts with Galileo, or classical physics starts with Galileo. And it starts with this idea that it might be possible that the Earth below us is moving all the time at 65,000 miles an hour, right? That idea forces us to really think about what motion really means and then allows us to analyze and make predictions on a very high level, mathematically detailed and tech and technologically applicable level. It allows us to apply the concept of motion in very specific ways to life here on Earth. But it all begins with us having to unpack the idea of what motion must really be if we could possibly believe that it's something that the floor beneath us is doing. The only way to really appreciate that is to stop for a moment and actually unlearn a little bit of what you've learned before, or at least unaccept some things that we've accepted on blind faith. I want everybody to remember with the train of thought experiment, I want everybody to remember it ain't obvious whether whether you're moving or not. That's just not obvious. It's not a matter of the idiots versus the smart people. It's a matter of complicated versus complicated when you really start thinking about it. Um, So, so what did Galileo like? What made Galileo different from Copernicus or different from Aristarchus, who came way before Copernicus or Kepler? What, why, what is it that Galileo actually said that eventually led him to live a life under house arrest, which he chose over, punishment by death? And he got to make that choice because he took back what he said, right? So what is it that he said that was like such a big deal? Well, see, I could go on about this all, as you can tell. Galileo, okay, okay, hold on. Yeah. Oh, wait, oh, okay, wait, I'm looking in the chat. Yeah, yeah. No, good, good, good. Right. Someone in the direct chat is saying, and actually this is helpful to me, and I love the stuff in the chat, like especially on like whatever. Um, Someone say in the direct chat is saying, like, all I remember is that Galileo was able to support the Copernicus heliocentric model, and that's some stuff I just remember from high school. Fair enough. And me too, like, right. And that's correct. Like there was geocentric model, which means we regard the Earth as geo means Earth. Geocentric, we regard the Earth as the center, sitting still, and that is the prevailing model of the universe for thousands of years. And then eventually comes this heliocentric model, this model that puts the sun in the center in stuff like the Earth, planets going around it. And yes, Galileo is able to advance or promote the Copernican model, but Galileo promotes it so directly and so in a way, so convincingly or challengingly that he gets challenged by the church, um, and offered a deal whether to take it back and therefore just live a life under house arrest or not take it back and be executed. But there's another word for that. But so he chose to take it back and live a life under house arrest after like writing two books, at least two books about this. So you're right who's saying that, and I want to show you what the and then this leads to Galileo's ability to start doing what we regard to be the fundamental physics experiments, like in his house, which I might add he wasn't doing before. See, I'm going to get all being under house arrest. It didn't just mean he couldn't leave the house. It also meant he was no longer allowed to do astronomical observations. Like he was no longer allowed to do any research with his telescope, which was a big part of this whole adventure. He was no longer allowed to draw pictures of the moon or the planets through his telescopic observations each night. So he switched to like inclined planes and balls rolling down inclined planes and experiments and conclusions that he came to Oh yeah, it's crazy. The whole story is, I just saw something in direct chat. The whole story is amazing. And it only gets deeper and deeper every time I think about it or write about it or whatever. And again, I have to, keep myself on track here. But what you're saying, but I certainly, if anything, I will not stay on track. I mean, I will happily respond to anything in the chat. So one thing the chat just reminded me is you have, I need you to understand that all these people that are saying geocentric model, well, wait, okay, so that's really interesting. All right, wait a minute. There's something in the chat. Someone in the chat also just said, hopefully this never happens again to science. And like, I appreciate that. I mean, that seems like a very pro science, like joyful, cool view. But part of my message here really is that this happens all the time within science and without science. I mean, science against itself, this happens all like in a way. This is the Galileo story is very dramatic, and in a way, it is the beginning. It is like the birth pains of physics as we know it today, of classical physics, as opposed to ancient physics. I mean, it is the beginning of the scientific method. It is the beginning of what we now today regard as science. But what I want to make clear to all of you, and yes, I mean, and yes, I mean, there's casualties to this whole story for sure. But but all the people, when we say that the church or Ptolemy or Aristotle or all of these people before Galileo like regarded the earth as sitting still at the center of the universe, it's really important to understand they didn't like just think that, and they didn't just like have a good reason for thinking that. They had a whole astronomical understanding of the universe based on that. Okay, I mean, like drawings and drawings and predictions and systems and dependencies, all of which worked and were correct. Like, let me say that again, or let me say it a different way. This is the birth of what Galileo ends up, his work ends up being the birth of what we consider to be the scientific method, reproducible experiments where you separate variables and things like that. Like that had not been done before as such. And a certain style of measurement and telescopes did not exist before. So, like, things that were amazing happened in a big way during this whole Galileo adventure. But make no mistake, it was not the birth of astronomy by any stretch of the imagination. I mean, my argument is, or my perspective is, that physics is the child of astronomy. Astronomy had been around as a science, as a study, had been around for thousands of years. And the thing I really want to, and I'm not arguing with the person who's in the direct chat, like I'm just like being lifted up by it, but I want to make clear to you the astronomy that had been done for thousands of years by whether the Greeks, the Romans, the Egyptians, the Chinese, the Mesopotamians, like whoever you name, the Hebrews, whoever you name, who had written astronomical data and records and predictions and systems. Let's get it. Yeah, yes, it's all written down that they had the earth at the center of the world, which we would now consider to be like not right. But everything that they predicted based on that was right. What do I mean? I mean, they knew the phases of the moon. That's one of the thousands of reasons that I draw the phases of the moon every day for you. We've known the phases of the moon for thousands of years, and we knew them way before we decided to put the earth in motion. And what we knew about them then is the same thing. I mean, we know more now, but our understanding of the pattern was exactly the same. Let me be more specific. They knew when eclipses were. They knew when Mercury would be in conjunction with the sun, like when you couldn't see Mercury because it'd be in front of the sun. They knew when that was going to happen correctly. And they knew, what else do you want to say? Like, I'm saying with the data that they had, but by they, I mean anyone you pick. The Chinese, the Mesopotamians, whoever you let, the Babylonians, or I forgot, in the South America, like the Mayans, for God's sake, no pun intended. I want to make it very clear. Their worldview was based on a premise that is fundamentally opposite to our worldview, and their worldview still came to the same conclusions. Don't misunderstand this. Like they things we know, and they knew about Jupiter, Venus, Mars, Mercury, what's the other one, Saturn, and they knew where they were going to be when, just like we do. Now we know more things that they didn't. We have telescopes. We can see deeper. We have more details, right? Oh, sorry. There's a lot happening in the chat. Okay, wait. I got to calm down. Hold on. I will totally answer all the stuff in the chat. This is great. Okay, and I will calm down and I will get you. But you can see I get very excited. This is my area of love. This the whole thing. Sorry. You can totally. I mean, all this stuff like Pisces, Scorpio, I mean, Capricorn, Aquarius, Pisces, Aries, Taurus, Gemini, all that stuff. And I'm not talking about horoscopes. I mean, I'm not saying, oh, if the sun is in Aries, then you should invest in the stock market. Like, okay, that's your opinion. I'm not saying about that, but I am saying, oh, the sun is in Aquarius. Oh, in a week, the sun will be in Pisces. Those kind of statements, which are astronomical, not astrological. Statements like there's a constellation called Aquarius, which is next to a constellation called Pisces. And right now they're over here in the sky. And in a week, they'll be over there. And right now, the sun in relation to them is here. And in a week, it'll be over there. All that stuff, it's been around forever. It's as correct now as it was then. And it's not incorrect. It may be incorrect to say you should invest in the stock market because the sun is in Aquarius. But to say the sun is in Aquarius is a scientific statement like saying the boat is in the Caspian Sea. Like literally, it's locating an object in an area of the sky that has total meaning and predictability. And the predictions that the ancient Greeks made or the ancient like Mesopotamians made about where the sun is going to be when in relation to what constellation, or where the moon is going to be when in relation to what constellation, or where Venus is going to be when they were correct. Okay. And they did it all based on a perspective that we now don't like, which really shows you how slippery the idea of perspective is. And by the way, I sound like a crazy person, but I'm not. This is not like a minority view. I'll tell you when we get to minority views. That you can look this up anywhere. Oh, so in terms of the chat, like there's a book someone wrote in the. Okay, so I just want to make clear that this notion of like revolutionizing your own mind or revolutionizing human minds to say, I actually think it'd be easier to look at the world as though the earth is actually moving. In fact, that's what Galileo, well, what Copernicus first, earlier, and then Galileo was saying, what he's saying is, you know what? We're starting to get so much data, so much more data than we've had for thousands of years because now we have telescopes, like literally that simple. That it starts to become easier and easier to model the earth, to explain the earth, to think the world, to think of the world in terms of a sun at the center rather than the earth. Or eventually we get, but then even that, we then say not the sun's in the center of the galaxy, but then the galaxies go. So it eventually becomes easier and easier to get rid of the center of the universe called the earth and look at it a different way. It becomes easier to do that, more convenient because we have more and more data. But it wasn't more convenient until we had that data. And it's a matter of convenience, really, or as more than anything else. If absolute truth, I see I'm getting so in order to appreciate what Galileo had to say in order to start doing physics experiments in his attic based on a notion of motion that he had to develop in order to resolve this argument is really important for us to actually understand that, in fact, we are not Galileans. We are the people that Galileo has to convince. The only reason we think we're Galileans is because on faith, we've accepted what our teachers have told us when we were younger. But our actual navigation through the world on a daily basis, what we experience is the sun rises in the east and sets in the west. And at night, there are these stars that if you've ever gone camping out or you've ever watched the stars for a long enough time, you'll notice that even all the stars do what all the zodiac constellations go from east to west and in the manner of the sun and the moon and what we now call planets. Like our experience is we sit here and watch the sky go by. How and why it might be more convenient to flip the perspective and think of it the other way is what we have to get to, but we can't get to that if we just accept the whole thing as just a matter of obviousness. I'm going to pause for a second. There's stuff in the so, for example, someone in the chat is asking, there's a book called Physics for Dummies. Do I think that would be useful? I think it's a great question. I like the for dummies. Sure, yes. There's other things like that. I'm all for anything that can make physics more accessible. Yes. It may not be perfect on this topic, but sure, physics for dummies, absolutely. Also, hold on. Do I have 1 second? 1 second. Okay. And this is not a paid advertisement, I promise. I mean, there's lots of things like that. And I'm not making a paid advertisement, but I'll also say in terms of this particular topic of the whole Galileo thing and everything, in your Google Classroom, I think somewhere under tools or something, this book is linked, whatever. This is my book it's a children's book. Okay. It's a children's story and it's meant and I'll probably read it to you one day in class. I usually do that once. So I'm not telling you to go out and spend money or anything like that. But I am saying I'll probably read it one day in class, maybe even soon if we're all fired up like this. And it's a children's story that's just a modern day children's like version of the dialogue, the trialogue among three characters that Galileo wrote as a story, as a clever way of convincing people of what he was getting at back in the time. Like he was smart enough not to like say it directly. So he said it indirectly in a satirical story. So then I updated that and made a children's version of it, whatever. So, and I recommend that too. Don't spend money. Like I'll read it to you and whatever, but it's there. And there's other things too. Also, if you really like, I highly recommend a book called Galileo's Daughter by a author named Dava Sobel. But it's a really, really thick, really big book. Beautiful, beautiful book. Uh, but a shorter version that's very similar, also by Dava Sobel. Sorry, Davasobel. Is a book called Longitude, which is beautiful and brilliant and much easier to read and shorter. Not almost the same story, sort of condensed. But I know all this stuff. Okay, I recommend anything that gets you. Look, the lesson here. I'm going to get back to it, and I'm going sorry, and I'll get back to the chat. Excuse me. The lesson here is that what physics is, okay, I'm always going to say this. Physics is simple, not easy. Physics is about what everybody thinks about and everybody cares about. They just don't know what to do with it. Sorry, okay, wait, and I'm getting okay. And it's for everybody. Like physics gets very high level. I know this. I mean, physics gets very mathy, gets very detailed, gets very seemingly esoteric. But that so whether you want whether you have other things to do in your life or not becomes an issue because it takes a lot of focus to hang with physics at certain levels. But the whole thing that's exciting about physics is that everything that we say that is surprising, whether it was in the 17th century, saying this surprising thing of the Earth is actually, or that we could regard the Earth as moving at 65,000 miles an hour, or today when we say surprising things like that there's black holes, or that if there's two twins and one twin goes into outer space at 87% the speed of light and then comes back, that twin will be twice as young as his or her other twin, which we do say. And we do believe, and I do believe, by the way, that's Einstein, right? Twin paradox, whatever. The person who said in the chat, and I respect this person, and I respect what this person's saying. I mean it. But the person who said, I hope that never happens again in science, I love the hope in that statement. But I guess my thing is I'm not even sure I agree. I agree with the sentiment, but but actually it's happening all the time, like right now. Like, and when it doesn't happen, it's even scarier. When everybody in, okay, here, oh my God, I'm totally sorry. I woke up on the God knows what side of the bed this morning. Um, when people today just accept like the Big Bang as an idea, right, which we teach in another class, like let's get, and I believe in the Big Bang. Don't get me wrong. Like I love this stuff. I believe this stuff, but I believe it because I think I've thought it through and I see why we believe it. And I believe in crazy things like the Big Bang because I think if I don't believe in the Big Bang, I have to actually believe in something more complicated and crazier. Like what I've come to understand in physics is that we are not trying to say crazy crap. We're trying to say the simplest possible things we can to fit the infinitely complex, overwhelming universe into our finite brains. We are trying as physicists to say things as simply as we can. And even in so doing, we end up with conclusions that are mind numbing in a way but follow logically from all the earlier simple statements that we all agreed on. In other words, what's a little bit crazy today is that everybody just reads the New York Times or whatever, gets their news on Twitter, and it's like, oh yeah, Big Bang, yeah, Big Bang, sure, Big Bang. Like what? People should be just as upset about the Big Bang as they were about the Earth moving 300. And again, I'm saying this with respect to the person who said, I hope this never happens again. In some ways, what I'm saying is we live in a scarier time now where science is such king. And I love science, but science is so king now that you can just read in the New York Times, the universe is expanding all the time, which doesn't just mean that things are getting farther apart from one another. It means that the space, the whole space of space is getting bigger all the time. Okay, I'm going crazy now, but let me make clear what that's trying to say. When we say the universe is expanding, we're not just saying that there's an amount of space called the universe and that stuff in it is getting spread out within that space. We're saying the space itself is getting bigger all the time. The space is expanding. Into what? Right? I mean, I'm saying the vessel is getting bigger. But how does when something gets bigger in general, that means it occupies more of the surrounding region, right? If you pour more milk into a glass, there's more milk within that glass. If you then say the glass gets bigger, then the glass takes up more of the volume of the air in the room. We're saying the universe is getting bigger, it's expanding. What? What does that mean? Am I saying it's wrong? No, I actually believe it. I totally believe it. But I do think that people just accept it because we're saying it is just as crazy as crazy in a different way from taking a scientist and putting him under house arrest because we'd rather believe what we think the church is saying at the time. Okay, the point that physics is trying to do is start with statements or observations that we all find reasonable and evident, like I've been in a train and it felt like this, and move logically, step by step, to inescapable conclusions or seemingly inescapable conclusions. That's what we do all the time. And it brings us to surprising places. And we should be skeptically challenging them all the time. Okay, I'm getting totally off that way. I'm going to look at the chat. I'm going to shut up. But so anybody who's putting anything in the chat at all is doing what I'm at, and like as long as you're like engaged in like what engaging in these questions, you're doing the right thing. And I'm not telling you what to believe. Of course I am, but like what am I telling you? I'm telling you that what Galileo had to fight was a very reasonable question, which was, dude, if you're saying the earth is moving, how the frick do we not sense it at all? Why have we never had any evidence? Okay, and he had to answer that. And that's the answer I want to give you. I want to give you his answer and show you how it begins physics. Okay, but again, I don't think the answer means anything unless you appreciate the question, but I'm pretty convinced you appreciate the question now because I just lost my mind and because of all this thing in the chat. So let me look in the chat. Hold on. But again, well, okay, hats off to the person who said, hopefully this never happens again. I totally get it. I'm down. Okay, we back up. Oh, back up. Yeah, right. Someone wrote, this cracks me. Someone wrote back up. That weird little drawing on the first page of notes in the class is a little moon. Yes, yes, it's a bat. I mean, my drawing is it. Yes, every day that look, I haven't talked to you about this. I'm going to do this every day for 2 semesters. So it's just one of these things where I'm just giving you data and I'm having you write it down. I'm never going to test you on it. By the end of Physics 204, hopefully you'll have a lot of reasons. You'll see why I do this every day. But yes, that's bad picture at the top there. That's the phase of the moon. So the yellow part is like what the moon looks like right now. It's a waning gibbous. And I'm just tracking, like, yeah, and like whatever it looks like is, and I would say that's the way the moon would look at that. I would say to you, so if you look up at the moon tonight, like it'll look like that. I would say that, but I won't say that because it's not true, because you won't see the moon at night tonight because the moon was out this morning and you didn't see it because it was bright out and and it was pretty thin. Like, and you might have seen it actually. I'm not saying, but like the moon was out this morning. It won't be out tonight. And I know that because whenever the moon looks like that, whenever it's waning like that, like shrinking, which I know that it is because it's on the left side, whenever the moon is shrinking, you see it in the morning or it's out in the morning. And when it's waxing is when it's out at night. Little tidbit there, one of many little tidbits that I rely on with regard to the moon. I will never test you on it. I'm not saying you have to know that, but I am saying this. The Greeks freaking knew that. The Greeks totally knew, the Romans knew that. Whoever the Egyptians knew that correctly, and they thought the earth was in the center. So go figure. And by the way, those numbers, RST, if you haven't, it stands for rise set temp. So the sun rose at 6:22 this morning. The sun will set, or at least where I am. I'm a little farther away from you when I zoom. I mean, like I'm in Maine, but so the numbers are slightly different in New York, but the pattern is the same. The sun will rise, did rise at 6:22 this morning, will set at 5:26. And the morning temperature when I wrote down is 48 degrees. I'm I ask you to just write these things down every day. I'm not ever going to ask you to memorize it or test it consciously. I'm asking you to just unconsciously track it because that will put you in the same position as the tons and tons and tons of peoples and cultures, like for thousands of years before, through Galileo, who just paid attention to these things and didn't make a big deal and didn't call themselves scientists, but were just tracking these patterns so that they got used to them. And then when anything broke a pattern, when anything was a surprise, then that really inspired curiosity and made people think. And most of well, and that's how science really works. Okay, so so I will tell you more why we track this data, but this is astronomical data that I think is at the heart of physics. See, I could get off. So there's a lot more to say about it, but yes, hang on. As the person said, back up that weird little, and you're all getting points for these. If I end up just like if that many of you are in the chat, I'm assuming something is happening that's worth the money and the time here. So like I'm good with this if you're good with me. But yes, that picture is the moon. Those pieces of data are like the data of the day. Um, uh, um, and they're different type. See, I can get, but yes, that's what that is. Oh, okay. So hold on. Oh my God, there's some very nice things being said in the chat about me, which I very much appreciate. And I do appreciate the compliment only in the sense that it reaffirms that it's okay that I'm doing this right now, because I know for some of you, this might just be like completely confusing or distracting. So I don't, so thank you for confirming that's not a horrible. Oh yeah, yeah. Okay, right. And fair enough. The person who like qualified in the chat, like the person who said, I hope it never happens again. And I really do think and I know who the person is. I respect, I know the person's work. So like, there's no, and I respect the sentiment, but then that person qualified. I guess I'm referring to the suppression of science by the authorities. Right. And I'm with you. And, and we live in it. I hope so too. I think it does. I think there's always a push and pull about science and authorities, always a push and pull. Sometimes it's more dramatic. Sometimes it's less. Um, but these days, look, people, we know. I mean, I could get off on a whole other. We do know that, the pendulum, and look, and it happens with all of you guys too. Like, and it's happening with you right now, in a way. If any of you is trying to be a Prism student, which I highly encourage, and we could talk in private, like, I think you're right at that cusp. It usually happens after Orgo right? But like if you're thinking about doing Prism funded research at John Jay College, which I totally like good. Um, that's tricky business right now because the federal funding for that is in question. So even just like grant, I mean, just where the money comes from is always a push or pull between science and authorities. And sidebar, Galileo totally, I mean, he had to get grants, they didn't call them grants then, but he had to get support and 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 he had to get his financial support from the very authorities that at first loved him and then he caused a problem with. So he had a very tricky it was not a simple relationship at all. Like his first, I don't want to, it's always tricky, but as you know, also, and I really have to be careful with this. When COVID happened, we happened to be in an era where it's kind of like the person in direct chat was like, then, you know, we're still in an era. There's a big cultural split in our country as to the level of authority or credibility that we give to scientific conclusions, such as masks, right? Vis-a-vis COVID. And I'm not right now, I'm not offering a political opinion, and I'm not even offering a scientific opinion on masks. I'm observing that the whole question of masks and everything that they symbolize, right, absolutely is a cultural divide in our country. I mean, it was when it happened, and it still is now in a different way. And I will go out on a limb and arguably that's like on the other side of the fact that the country did shut down more or less for a period of time, and the fact that masks were mandated in many places in the country, to put it mildly, like does indicate that scientific conclusions were given a little bit more credibility than they might have been in 1628 AD, and maybe even more than and vaccines and all that stuff, right? And I want to be very careful about that because even there, I want to say, and I mean this from a personal standpoint and a professional standpoint, like, yes, it would seem that scientific conclusions were given a little bit more room or credibility or whatever, at least were, right when COVID happened. Um, but even there, it leaves me a little uneasy. Even bumper stickers that I see where they'll say things like science is real or something like that, I think. And I think pretty much what they mean is like masks are a good thing or something. Well, if nothing else, let me just tell you, like what I love about science is the process. What I love about science is the humility that we are trying to embrace when we construct rules of engagement and say we've got to collect data in a certain way, we've got to collect data in a way that our friends in China or our friends in like Brazil or where, that our counterparts in any other part of the country, we're going to collect data in a way that they could also collect data. We're going to send them the procedures that we just followed to set up this controlled experiment, which we did over and over 50 times. We're going to say from this data, we found this correlation. Now you do it too. You follow these procedures. We're being transparent. See if you don't also come to a similar correlation. And blah, 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 all of that is what is amazing about science and is what was not done before Galileo. Like the scientific method is a crown jewel of science, which I will like publicly advocate for or whatever, as I'm doing right now. But that doesn't mean, but that is exactly what our gift is that we have a process for getting closer and closer to the truth, which is always a rocky, non-linear journey and it never ends. Right? It doesn't mean that we have the truth. And it doesn't mean that any given moment, any conclusion that any bunch of scientists or our researchers are coming to, it doesn't mean that any of our conclusions are um, are like unarguable, incontrovertible. Like the minute we say, like even masks, okay, and I mean, you guys know, or some of you, I have a medical condition, which is, and thank God for medical research, or I'd be dead. right? So I'm like, I'm all for it. And I wear masks on the subway so that I'm not dead and all that stuff. But the hill, but my but the thing that I would not I but the what's correct is not masks. What's correct is not any conclusion that any scientist came to. If I start thinking that any given conclusion of any given moment is the truth and is the thing that makes someone who disagrees with it an idiot, I've missed the point of science. Like masks may be the best thing we have going right now. I wear one. I don't like to, but whatever. I wear one. But I'm perfectly open to the idea that in 50 years we come up with a better idea or realize that there were more drawbacks to masks than we even realized. And they were actually the costs actually outweigh the benefits. I mean, the medical cost that may be. Like we don't have all the data now. Or vaccine. I'm not telling you what to believe about any of this stuff. What I'm saying is, if when I say that science is real, what I mean is the process is real, and the idea that I don't accept any conclusion just because it's a conclusion of the moment, whether a scientist said it or someone else said it, it's not who said it or what it is that makes it truth. It's how humbly is it open to the possibility that truth at any minute is deeper than what we are experiencing. That's what science is supposed to be. It's supposed to be dynamic. It's supposed to be open to everybody. Okay, I'm going crazy again, but like I forget why now. Sorry. Oh, because right. So yes, I also hope that science does not get repressed by authorities. Like again, in that way, I kind of hope nobody gets oppressed by it. Yeah, I get you and you get me. Okay. Wait, sorry. Yes, you have to leave the Zoom early because of a dentist appointment. Fine. I can imagine if we all have to leave early. Okay. And why are you casually trying? Okay. So, um, uh, okay. As to the drawing, I mean, it's because of the new organization. Wait, sorry, I'm reading all the chat. Oh, we're almost okay. I've got to. Well, I do appreciate that so many of you are in the chat, and it's so many different of you. It does at least make me feel like something is happening here. Um, Obviously, you could tell I care, right? Not well. Okay, so let me respond. So the person in the chat who originally was like, "Wait, that's the moon," but now their point, I misunderstood their point. Like the circle at the top is the moon. No, the weird thing at the top left and the weird thing at the bottom. At the top left is supposed to be like a star, kind of like a person, like a character who's sort of based on a star, like running and pointing. Okay, and maybe somewhat once upon a time we might say like vaguely feminine in stereotype. The thing at the top is supposed to be like essentially a female star, like directing your attention to the right side of the board and down. And the thing at the bottom is, well, originally when I mean, I do this every day, so it gets like sloppier and sloppier, but the thing at the bottom is supposed to be like a big cloud that's vaguely male in gender. Not that that matters, except you'll see why. It sort of does in a second. So the top is supposed to be sort of a star, and the bottom is supposed to be sort of a cloud, but the top is sort of a female-ish figure who's directing your attention one way, and the cloud is like paying attention to what's going on the top. And why they're there, again, it's partly just to be silly and to have a, trademark for the class. But you'll notice that almost every day, what I try to do on that front page, in between those two characters, is I try to have a couple of the key equations that we either are reviewing that we just got to yesterday, or we're trying to get to today. Now, again, today, like I'm going to have to write this board again tomorrow because today, like when I wrote this, I sort of forgot that we hadn't finished train of thought yet, and that's what we're doing now. But you'll notice that usually there's not only an equation between the two characters, but there's usually more than one. It's usually like two. And the reason for all of that, I mean, this is all just in the background, and you're not supposed to care. You don't have to consciously care about any of this. But what I'm trying to get across to all of you with the weird characters and the equations between them is I want you to think of each as a dialogue. Like the subconscious idea is that one character is kind of saying, V equals the limit of T, and the other character saying like, yeah, but A equals the limit of blah. And I want you to think of it as a dynamic dialogue, like the equations that that we're looking at every day are not just they're not formulas. I hate the word formula. They're not formulas. They're not just things that like some wizard like came up with and is now giving to us and we always have to memorize uh, like and move on. No, they're conversation. Equations are statements. They're just mathematical symbols for what otherwise were or could be English thoughts or Chinese thoughts or Hebrew thoughts or whatever, right? And so whenever I put the equation of the day or the equations, I'm sort of just subtly trying to get across. They're just statements in an ongoing conversation that we're having with each other over this class, but over hundreds of years as well, thousands of years as well. Okay, so yeah, so no, those aren't moons. I mean, the thing at the top is like a star saying something, and the thing at the bottom is a cloud either thinking about it or saying something back. I mean, it's very, but, and the equations are wherever we were coming from and where we're going in the conversation of our class. That's what that is. I mean, thank you for, I'm glad you noticed. Okay, wait. So what else? Period. Original character design, period. You ate that up. I don't even know what that means. Okay. Oh, very nice. Well, thank you. No, you're very kind, all of you. You are very kind. I'm just like, I mean, this is all an attempt to make Zoom tolerable. Okay. Oh my God. Okay. Excuse me. Um, all right. So I'm gonna cut. It's a little late to cut to the chase, isn't it? Here's the chase. Oh, wait. Start a podcast. Thank you. I don't think the drawings. Yeah, well, anyway, thank you. I appreciate it. This is the podcast, dude. This is the podcast. I mean, but I don't need anything more besides you guys. As long as you care, we're good. Um, but thank you. All right, look. Okay, so where we were. Oh my God, am I going to say this now? Okay. So one thing that made Galileo different from Copernicus and Kepler is that Galileo had a telescope, which I mean, had just gotten invented in his lifetime. He didn't invent it, but someone during his lifetime invented, and he found out about it, and he was an early adopter. So there was like a couple of telescopes around, and then Galileo went home and made his own, which is a crazy story on its own. Like it's just like he made his own. I mean, it's like ludicrous. Um, but he made his own telescope and then started looking through it every night at the sky and drawing what he saw. And I'm loving what's in the chat, but I'm just trying, for everybody's sake, I'm ignoring it, but thank you. Um, um, Galileo started looking through his own telescope every night at the stars and the moon and so forth, and drawing what he saw. And he knew he was so there was a couple of telescopes around, but he's like the guy, and maybe a couple other people were doing this too, but he was doing it intensely and competitively, I think. And he was a super early adopter of so by looking through a telescope, the telescope magnified like 4 to 10 times. I mean, it had a magnification of like 4 to 10, right? Which meant that now he's seeing the sky 10 times closer than anybody ever has in human history before. That's part of the drama of the story, is that Galileo has now, I mean, it's like being an astronaut, really. He is now, and he knows it. He's now literally 10 times closer to the sky than anybody who has done observations, and they have, or all of these systems that have been in place for thousands of years. He's now got a closer glimpse by about tenfold. And he's drawing carefully every night what he sees. And he's literally seeing things that no one's ever seen before. I mean, dots are coming into view that no one has ever seen. Now, that is crazy exciting, okay? And a whole other, and that's part of what the book is about. My book is about. But because of that, because he gets all this data that no one's had before, and he's rushing to publish it, and he's getting funding from Medici, the princes of the Prince of Medici and his four sons, whatever. He starts realizing, oh my God, it's like harder and harder to believe the old view, and more sort of necessary or convenient to believe the Copernican or to use the Copernican view because of all this data that's coming in through the telescope. Now, I can't, since I've gone this far, I can't resist going a little farther and saying, so now, yes, the impetus or the motivation for Galileo really taking Copernicus seriously in ways that even Copernicus hadn't. Okay, I'm going to say Copernicus wasn't saying what's true or not true. he was saying, look, here's a different way of looking at the universe that will make our predictions more convenient and easy. We'll come to the same predictions with less work if we think of it this way. So the reason Copernicus didn't get burnt at the stake or like anything like that is that Copernicus wasn't saying this is the way the world is. He was saying, if you think about it this way, your math will be faster. That's cool. So that's almost like technology. But now Galileo's saying, yeah, and also I think there's bigger implications than that because like I've got this telescope and I'm seeing like the phases of Venus and the and moons of Jupiter and stuff that's telling me like, whoa, something is up. Okay, so you might even say, and I know I'm really running out of time now, but as long as we're doing all this, you might say, oh, well, okay, he's got a telescope. I mean, so now anybody who's arguing with him, like now they're crazy. You might say, like, if he's got a telescope and he's got things that he sees in the telescope that indicate that the earth is moving, and you got to be really careful. Again, that's where my book comes. Just, I mean, what would those things be that would convince? I mean, that's the point of the train of thought. Again, is like even if you introduce white lights, or even if you now introduce colored lights, like what would have to happen? What would you have to see, even if you get closer, to convince that would make you clear that you were moving, not that thing? Like it's not obvious, right? But he does see a bunch of stuff that does motivate him to think we could say we're moving. Okay, and he's got the telescope. So you might say, well, now he's got a telescope and he's got the data. So now anybody who's arguing him is just being an ass, you might say. But no, because think about it. And no, I mean, think about it. Someone says, the earth, look down. The earth is not moving. I mean, when I jump up, I don't hit the wall of my house because the earth like slipped out from under me, like or a tree. Like the earth is not moving. Convince me why you believe the earth is moving, since I don't sense it at all. It's not like Galileo can then say, look at the telescopic data that we all obviously take seriously. Galileo would say, come over to my house, look in this can that I'm the only one on my block that has. Look at this can, like put your face on this end, look through this tube and look down. What do you see? And the person can say, well, I see like a white dot over there or whatever, two white dots over there at the other end of the tube. And then Galileo will go, see? And that person, if that person is remotely rational or normal, if that person is me or you, that person's going to go, what? I just looked through a can that you have, and I looked through one end, and on the other end of the can, I saw two white dots that, as far as I'm concerned, are in the can. Like, and you're telling me that that just unlocked the secrets of the universe and just toppled over 2,000 years of historical thought? Like, because you have a can in your house and you shoved my face in one end of it, and you're telling me and I saw the other end of the can, and now you're like, see? Like, in other words, yeah, he's got a telescope, but it's a totally brand new device. It hasn't been tested. No one knows what it is. Why on earth would they believe that this weirdo device that's in someone's house is actually telling us anything about the freaking universe? And that is what would happen now. And that is what should happen now. No one should believe a can in someone's house just because they say my can. I mean, that is wizardry. To say, I've got the magic can. It's not literally a can, a tube, whatever. Like to just say, I've got this tube that's so powerful that what the tube, if you see dots in the tube, you should change your whole worldview. Right? I mean, even Steve Jobs doesn't operate that way. And I'm saying that with respect, or didn't operate. Like, right? The reason we would ever believe a tube is if enough people have tubes and do the same thing with tubes over and over again, and first show us that the tubes are reveal things that we already have some confidence in. If we first see that the tubes can reinforce ways that things we already do and make them easier, then when the tubes start telling us, I mean, this is like chat GPT or anything else. Like it's new technology. The one person who has it is not, has first of all, has to convince us all of the value of the technology before they just use it and try to change our mind about the entire universe. Okay, I'm going crazy again, but you see, it's not so simple to just be like, duh. Of course the earth is moving at 65,000 miles an hour. Like, really, anybody who would just accept that, that person's kind of a little bit loopy. right? Just like today, we should not accept masks just because someone says so, just because one person says so. What we are accepting, if we accept, okay, I'm going, okay, anyway, oh my God, okay, okay. Right, right, right. Someone in the chat. Yes, exactly. Oh, a number of people. Okay, I've got to. Okay, so you, all right. Oh my God. All right. So what am I saying here? I'm just going to write the main point is this. We're going to have to get a good. I am watching the time. We have to say a lot more about this, I know, but just so that you land on some kind of conclusion today. What I'm about to write for you is Form 1, I have 3 minutes. I'm going to write down Form 1 of the English translation of an idea from Galileo that became known as Galileo's principle of relativity. Who called it? Galileo didn't call it that. Einstein called it that in 1905 because that's how important it is. I mean, if you've ever heard of Einstein relativity and all that, it all comes from this originally. Okay, the principle of relativity. I mean, and it comes in many, many different forms that we're going to learn through the class. This is all not a sidebar, I promise. The principle of relativity comes in many forms. I'm going to give you today Form 1. So Galileo's principle of relativity, Form number 1. And even this is an English translation. I mean, Galileo did not write in English. And what this is an answer. It is not a proof that the Earth is moving or anything like that. It's a statement of how it could possibly be true that the Earth would move at 65,000 miles an hour, and yet we would have no sensory evidence of it. The reason that Galileo said is that the laws, and we're going to end up with the laws of physics are the same at all constant velocities, speeds, and directions, right? Okay, we've got 2 minutes left. This is a principle. The principle is the laws of physics are the same. Now, there's different ways of saying this, but the laws of physics are the same at all constant velocities. A more technical way of saying it is well, it doesn't matter. We'll say that tomorrow. The laws of physics are the same at all constant velocities. Now, check this out with 1 minute. This is a principle. It comes before laws. It's a principle because it's meant to sound so obvious that it's not even worth saying. Like, duh, like why would a law change from one speed? I mean, laws governing motion, why would they change from one motion to another if they're laws, right? Like it's pretty hard to argue. It's not that this is supposed to be a surprise that it's true. The surprise is how much it matters. And it's a principle. It comes even before the laws. This is to like the Constitution as the Constitution is to like statutes, right? Galileo is saying this before there are any laws of physics. Galileo lives before Newton. There's no Newton's first law, Newton's second law, Newton's third law of motion. There aren't laws yet. What Galileo is saying is if we're going to start physics now, if we're going to start actually doing experiment, oh, it's 12:05. What he's saying is whatever the laws would be, they would be the same at 100 miles an hour as they would be at 3,000 miles an hour, whatever they are, and I don't even know what they are, which would mean, I'll just say this quickly, which would mean you couldn't tell the difference. Any experiment you would do, if you dropped a ball at 100 miles an hour, it would land at your feet. If you dropped a ball at 3,000 while you were on an airplane going really fast and you dropped the ball, it would land at your feet. Anything would play out the same way at any speed. So there'd be no way to know what speed you're going. Galileo is the first person to nail that down as a principle, not an observation. He's saying any laws that we construct from here on in would have to obey that. that they wouldn't change from one velocity to another. And therefore, it doesn't mean the Earth is moving. It means if it were moving, we wouldn't know the difference, which we don't. You've been very, very patient. We'll get back to this next, and you'll never. We'll get, you've been very patient. I'll hang out for a second if there's any questions, but other than that, just keep up with the homework wherever you are, and I'll see you Monday. But thank you for all the stuff in the chat. I really, oh, good. I'm really glad. Oh, cool. I'm not awesome. We'll continue Monday. I'm stopping.